She thought she could hide her true self, but the Comanche warrior saw more than she ever imagined. What happens when secrets collide with destiny on the untamed frontier? Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The frontier town of Silver Creek, Texas, 1875. As dawn broke over the dusty main street, Katherine Adams, the governor's daughter, sat in her elegant carriage, observing the townspeople with a mixture of fascination and unease. Her fair complexion contrasted with her dark auburn hair, pinned neatly beneath her bonnet. She had been sent west to stay with her aunt after a scandal threatened her father's political career back in Boston. "Miss Adams, we should proceed to your aunt's homestead," urged her escort, a stern-faced man named Jonah who had served her family for years. "Just a moment longer, Jonah. I've never seen a town quite like this." Her eyes lingered on a group of Comanche traders at the far end of the street, their presence causing visible tension among the townsfolk. Katherine had been raised with tales of the savage Indians, but her studies at university had given her a different perspective. These weren't the monsters of childhood stories, but people with their own complex culture and history. As they finally moved forward, the carriage wheel struck a deep rut, causing Katherine to lurch forward. The horses whinnied in protest as Jonah struggled to regain control. The commotion drew attention, including that of a tall Comanche warrior who stood observing from the shadows between two buildings. His name was Running Wolf, though the white settlers called him Wolf when forced to address him at all. He was the son of a chief, sent to negotiate trade agreements with the reluctant townspeople. At 28, he had already proven himself in battle and in council, earning respect among his people. Wolf watched the elegant carriage with mild curiosity until he saw the flash of auburn hair as the woman's bonnet slipped. Something about her caught his attention, a sense of determination in her posture, perhaps, or the way she surveyed her surroundings with intelligent eyes rather than fear. Later that afternoon, Katherine slipped away from her aunt's stifling home. "I'll just be in the garden," she had promised, but the wilderness beyond called to her. Taking a small leather journal, she ventured toward a creek she had spotted on their arrival. The water sparkled in the afternoon sun as Katherine settled against a boulder, her sketch pencil moving across the page as she captured the landscape. So absorbed was she in her work that she failed to notice the approaching figure until his shadow fell across her page. "You are far from town, Boston lady," came a deep voice, its English precise but accented. Katherine startled, nearly dropping her journal as she looked up to see the Comanche warrior from town. Up close, his presence was even more imposing, tall and powerfully built, with intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed persona. "How did you know I'm from Boston?" she asked, surprising herself with her steadiness. A slight smile touched his lips. "Your dress, your speech, the way you look at everything as if it's new." "I didn't realize I was so transparent," Katherine replied, closing her journal and preparing to stand. "I should return before my absence is noticed. The land between here and town is not always safe for a woman alone," Wolf said, gesturing toward the horizon where dark clouds were gathering. "Storm comes." As if to confirm his words, a distant rumble of thunder reached them. Katherine glanced at the darkening sky with concern. "I know a shelter," Wolf offered, surprising himself. Something about this woman's courage in venturing out alone intrigued him. "Or I can guide you back to town." Katherine hesitated, weighing her options. Returning to her aunt's house soaked and possibly caught in a dangerous storm seemed foolish, yet trusting this stranger went against everything she'd been taught. "I'm Katherine Adams," she said finally, offering her name as a small token of trust. "My people call me Running Wolf," he replied with a slight nod. "The white men call me Wolf." Another crack of thunder, closer now, made the decision for her. "Lead the way, mister." "Wolf," she said, gathering her skirts. As they moved through the landscape, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. Wolf led her to a small cave set into a hillside, its entrance partially concealed by brush. Inside, it was dry and surprisingly spacious. "You won't be compromised by the shelter," Wolf said, noting her hesitation. "It's known to my people as a sacred place. No harm will come to you here." Katherine nodded gratefully, moving deeper into the cave as the rain intensified outside. "Thank you. My aunt would have a fit if she knew where I was right now. And what about you, Katherine Adams? Are you having a fit? There was a hint of humor in his voice. Katherine surprised herself by laughing. No, I find this all rather interesting. She paused, studying him. You speak English very well. I was taken to a mission school as a boy, Wolf said, his expression darkening briefly. They thought they could change who I was. Did they succeed? Katherine asked softly. Wolf met her gaze. I learned their language and their ways, but I remained Comanche in my heart. Outside, the storm raged, but within the cave, an unexpected connection was forming between two people from worlds that rarely intersected without conflict. The storm had passed by nightfall, but a new tempest was brewing in Silver Creek. Katherine's absence had been discovered, and search parties were forming to find the governor's daughter. Her aunt, Elizabeth Thornfield, wrung her hands as she paced the parlor. She was supposed to be in the garden. How could she just vanish? Elizabeth's voice rose with each word. If anything happens to her, her father will never forgive me. Meanwhile, in the cave, Katherine and Wolf had fallen into conversation that transcended their different backgrounds. She told him of her life in Boston, her education that had been considered excessive for a woman, and her father's political aspirations. He sent me here after I spoke at a women's suffrage meeting, she admitted. It caused quite the scandal. Wolf nodded thoughtfully. Among my people, women have always had a voice in council, not the same as men, but valued differently. Really? Katherine leaned forward with interest. In Boston, most men believe women incapable of rational thought beyond household matters. That seems, Wolf searched for the English word, wasteful, to silence half your people. As they talked, Katherine began to understand the complexity of the Comanche world, their deep connection to the land, their social structures, the devastating impact of white settlement on their traditional ways of life. The railroad is coming, Wolf said, his expression grim. Each year, our hunting grounds shrink. The buffalo are disappearing. I've read about this, Katherine said softly. It seems terribly unjust. Wolf studied her face, searching for insincerity but finding none. You are not what I expected from a governor's daughter. Katherine smiled slightly. I'm not who you think I am, she whispered. Not entirely, anyway. Before Wolf could respond, they heard voices calling in the distance. The search parties had spread out from town. They're looking for you, Wolf said, moving to the cave entrance. You should go to them. Katherine hesitated. Will I see you again? Wolf's expression remained impassive. It would be dangerous, for both of us. Nevertheless, Katherine pressed, I would like to continue our conversation. After a moment's consideration, Wolf nodded. There is a stand of cottonwoods by the bend in the creek. I will be there tomorrow at midday if you can come. Katherine smiled. I'll find a way. Wolf watched as she hurried toward the voices calling her name. Her figure soon swallowed by the darkness. Something about this woman stirred emotions he had thought long buried. Curiosity, admiration, and a dangerous sense of possibility. The next morning, Katherine faced her aunt's stern reprimand with outward contrition. I became disoriented in the storm and found shelter in a hollow tree, she lied smoothly. It was frightening but ultimately uneventful. Elizabeth studied her niece suspiciously. You're fortunate you weren't discovered by hostiles. There have been Comanche in town this past week. Really? Katherine feigned surprise. How interesting. Interesting is not the word I would use, her aunt replied dryly. They may have signed treaties, but they're still dangerous. You're confined to the house for the remainder of the week. Katherine nodded dutifully while her mind raced, planning how she would slip away to meet Wolf. The opportunity came sooner than expected when her aunt was called away to assist with a birth at a neighboring farm. I'll return by evening, Elizabeth said, gathering her medical bag. Stay inside, Katherine. I mean it. Of course, Aunt Elizabeth, Katherine promised, waiting only until her aunt's buggy had disappeared down the road before changing into her simplest dress and heading for the cottonwoods. Wolf was already there when she arrived, sitting motionless against a tree trunk. He rose as she approached, surprise flickering across his usually stoic features. You came, he said simply. I said I would, Katherine replied, settling on a fallen log, though I had to be somewhat creative with the truth. Wolf's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. A dangerous skill. Their conversation resumed as if never interrupted, ranging across politics, philosophy, and personal histories. Wolf spoke of his childhood before the mission school, of learning to hunt and track, of tribal ceremonies and oral histories passed down through generations. Your people have a rich culture, Katherine observed. Yet in Boston, we're taught that the Western tribes are primitive and uncultured. And we are taught that white settlers are greedy and without honor, Wolf countered. Perhaps there is truth and falsehood in both beliefs. As the afternoon waned, Katherine reluctantly rose to leave. I must return before my aunt. Wolf nodded, then hesitated. Tomorrow, there will be a meeting between my father and your town council. I will be there as his interpreter. Then perhaps we shall see each other again, Katherine said with a smile. What neither knew was that they had been observed. Thomas Blackwood, the ambitious young deputy who had long harbored resentment toward the native population, had followed Katherine from town. Now he watched with growing anger as she spoke with the Comanche warrior, with such obvious familiarity. This will be of great interest to your aunt, he muttered as he slipped away, and to the governor himself. That evening, as Katherine sat reading in the parlor, a knock came at the door. Her aunt returned from her medical call, answered it to find Deputy Blackwood on the porch. Mrs. Thornfield, he said, removing his hat, I need to speak with you about your niece. It's a matter of some delicacy. Elizabeth's expression darkened as she ushered him inside. From the hallway, Katherine overheard enough to understand her secret meetings with Wolf had been discovered. Her heart raced as she contemplated the consequences, not just for herself, but for the fragile peace between the town and the Comanche. The town hall meeting was tense, with Chief Tallbear and his small delegation seated on one side of the room, the town council on the other. Wolf stood slightly behind his father, his face impassive as he translated the proceedings. Katherine sat in the back of the room beside her aunt, who had insisted on attending after Deputy Blackwood's visit. Tell your father that we cannot allow Comanche hunting parties so close to our settlements, Mayor Harrison was saying, his jowls quivering with barely suppressed anger. The treaty specifies boundaries. Wolf translated, his voice steady. When his father responded, Wolf turned back to the council. My father says the boundaries were drawn by men who did not understand the migration patterns of the buffalo. Our people follow the herds as we have for generations. Without the buffalo, we cannot feed our children. Mayor Harrison waved dismissively. That's not our concern. The boundaries exist for a reason. To keep our people safe. As the debate continued, Katherine found herself growing increasingly frustrated with the council's dismissive attitude. When there was a lull in the conversation, she stood, ignoring her aunt's hissed command to sit down. If I may speak, she said, her clear voice carrying across the room. I believe there might be a compromise that serves both communities. All eyes turned to her, including Wolf's, whose surprise was evident only in the slight widening of his eyes. Miss Adams, Mayor Harrison said stiffly, this is not an appropriate forum for a young lady's opinions. My father is Governor Adams, Katherine replied calmly. I've attended many such negotiations and have studied the treaties extensively. I believe I can offer a perspective that might be valuable. The mention of her father's position created a ripple of whispers through the room. Mayor Harrison cleared his throat. Very well, Miss Adams. What do you propose? Katherine moved forward, conscious of Wolf's intense gaze. The treaty specifies fixed boundaries, but it also includes provisions for temporary hunting rights during migration seasons. If we establish clear time frames and communication protocols, it could prevent misunderstandings while respecting both the letter of the treaty and the practical needs of the Comanche people. A murmur went through the room as Wolf translated her words for his father. Chief Tallbear studied Katherine thoughtfully before responding. My father asks why the governor's daughter would speak for the Comanche. Wolf translated, his eyes meeting Katherine's briefly. I speak not for the Comanche, but for a just application of the treaty, Katherine answered directly to the chief. War benefits no one. Understanding benefits all. After several more exchanges, a tentative agreement was reached. The Comanche would be granted seasonal hunting rights in specified areas, with advance notice given to the town. In return, they would assist in keeping hostile bands away from Silver Creek settlements. As the meeting concluded, Katherine found herself facing her aunt's cold fury. "You have embarrassed me and your father," Elizabeth hissed as they left the town hall, "involving yourself in men's business, and with savages no less." "They're not savages, Aunt Elizabeth," Katherine replied, keeping her voice low. "They're people trying to survive the loss of their way of life. And I suppose your Comanche friend has been filling your head with such nonsense," her aunt retorted. "Deputy Blackwood told me everything. Meeting a warrior alone. Do you have any idea what people will say? What this could do to your father's career?" Katherine felt a chill at the mention of Blackwood. She glanced back to see the deputy watching her, a smug smile on his face. Beyond him stood Wolf, his expression unreadable as he observed the exchange. Later that afternoon, Katherine managed to slip away again, heading to the cottonwoods in hopes of finding Wolf. He was there, waiting. "You spoke well today," he said as she approached. "Few white women would dare." "Few are as stubborn as I am," Katherine replied with a small smile. "Did I overstep? I didn't mean to speak for your people." Wolf shook his head. "You spoke for fairness. My father was impressed." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But you have made enemies. The yellow-haired deputy watches you with anger in his eyes." "Thomas Blackwood," Katherine sighed. "He told my aunt about our meetings. I fear he means to cause trouble." "For you or for me?" Wolf asked. "For both of us, I suspect." Katherine moved closer, lowering her voice. "I'm worried, Wolf. Blackwood has always harbored hatred for the native tribes. He lost family in a raid years ago. Not Comanche from what I understand, but he doesn't distinguish between tribes." Wolf nodded grimly. "Such men are dangerous. They see only what they wish to see." He studied her face. "You should not come here again. It isn't safe." "Are you concerned for my reputation?" Katherine asked with a hint of challenge. "Or for something else?" Wolf's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "I am concerned for your safety, and for the peace we have built." Before Katherine could respond, they heard the sound of approaching horses. Wolf tensed, moving instantly into a defensive stance. "Go," he urged, guiding her toward a dense thicket. "Return to town by the creek path. I will lead them away." "Wolf," Katherine began, but he cut her off with a gesture. "Go now," he insisted. "We will speak again when it is safer." Reluctantly, Katherine slipped into the underbrush, making her way back toward town, as Wolf moved in the opposite direction, deliberately leaving visible tracks for the riders to follow. She had nearly reached the edge of town when Deputy Blackwood intercepted her, his horse blocking her path. "Miss Adams," he said, dismounting with exaggerated courtesy. "Out for another solitary walk?" "I find the fresh air invigorating, Deputy," Katherine replied coolly. "Now if you'll excuse me, my aunt will be expecting me." Blackwood stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know what you're doing, miss. Consorting with that Comanche buck. It's unnatural, and I won't stand for it." Katherine felt a flash of fear but kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you're implying, Deputy, but I suggest you speak more carefully to the governor's daughter." "Governor's daughter or not," Blackwood growled, "I'll not see this town corrupted by Indian lovers. You'd best remember where your loyalties should lie." With that, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Katherine shaken but more determined than ever to prevent the conflict she sensed was brewing. That evening, as Katherine prepared for bed, she heard raised voices from downstairs. Creeping to the landing, she overheard Deputy Blackwood speaking urgently to her aunt. "Planning an attack. My sources are reliable, Mrs. Thornfield. The Comanche delegation is just a distraction while they position warriors around the town." "Are you certain?" Her aunt's voice sounded doubtful. "They seemed sincere in the negotiations today." "It's what they do," Blackwood insisted. "They talk peace while preparing for war. We need to strike first before they can organize." Katherine's blood ran cold. She knew Blackwood was lying. The Comanche had no plans for attack, but she also knew how easily such fears could spread through a frontier town already on edge. Dawn broke over Silver Creek with an ominous red glow. Katherine had slept fitfully, her dreams filled with conflict and pursuit. As she dressed, she heard the commotion in the street below. Men gathering, weapons being distributed. Her worst fears were being realized. She rushed downstairs to find her aunt in the kitchen, calmly preparing breakfast as if it were any ordinary day. "What's happening?" Katherine demanded. Why are men gathering with rifles? Elizabeth sighed, setting down her mixing bowl. Deputy Blackwood has evidence that the Comanche are planning an attack. The men are organizing a preemptive strike. Evidence? Katherine scoffed. What evidence? I was at the negotiations yesterday. Chief Tallbear and his people want peace. Blackwood has a scout who overheard their plans, her aunt replied. They're using you, Katherine. Your friendship with that warrior has blinded you to their true intentions. Katherine shook her head vehemently. No, Aunt Elizabeth. Blackwood is lying. He wants conflict. He's always wanted it. This is his excuse to drive the Comanche away permanently or worse. Her aunt studied her with a mixture of concern and disappointment. I've sent word to your father. He'll be arranging for your return to Boston immediately. This frontier life has clearly had a detrimental effect on your judgment. Realizing she would get nowhere with her aunt, Katherine grabbed her shawl. I need some air. You'll stay right here, young lady, Elizabeth commanded, but Katherine was already out the door. The town was in chaos, with men loading rifles and women gathering children indoors. Katherine spotted Mayor Harrison outside the general store and hurried toward him. Mayor Harrison, she called. Please, you must stop this madness. The Comanche aren't planning an attack. The mayor looked at her with pity. Miss Adams, I understand you've developed some sympathy for these people, but Deputy Blackwood has reliable information. We're just protecting our town. By starting a war, Katherine challenged. At least send a messenger to their camp. Speak with Chief Tallbear before you do something that can't be undone. There's no time, Blackwood interrupted, approaching on horseback. My men spotted Comanche warriors moving into position at dawn. We need to move now. Katherine knew she had to act quickly. As Blackwood turned to address his hastily assembled militia, she slipped away, heading for the livery stable. She had never stolen anything in her life, but minutes later she was galloping out of town on a borrowed horse, racing toward the Comanche encampment. The camp was situated in a sheltered valley several miles from town. As Katherine approached, she was met by Comanche scouts who regarded her with suspicion, but recognized her from the negotiations. They escorted her to the center of the camp, where Chief Tallbear sat with his council, Wolf among them. Wolf rose immediately when he saw her, concern evident in his usually stoic features. Katherine, why are you here? There's no time to explain fully, she said breathlessly. Deputy Blackwood has convinced the townspeople that you're planning an attack. He's assembled a militia. They'll be here within the hour. Chief Tallbear listened as Wolf translated, his weathered face growing grave. He spoke rapidly in Comanche, gesturing to several warriors who immediately departed. My father says we will break camp, Wolf translated. We came for peace, not war. We will move to the high country until this misunderstanding can be resolved. It's not a misunderstanding, Katherine insisted. Blackwood wants conflict. He's been looking for an excuse. As the camp erupted into activity, Wolf drew Katherine aside. You've taken a great risk coming here. I couldn't let innocent blood be shed based on lies, she replied. Not when I knew the truth. Wolf's expression softened. You are a brave woman, Katherine Adams. Brave and honorable. He hesitated, then added, I will escort you back to the edge of town. No, Katherine said firmly. I'm going to stop Blackwood. I need to get to Mayor Harrison, make him understand what's happening. Before Wolf could protest, they heard the distant sound of approaching horses. The militia had moved faster than expected. Chief Tallbear barked orders, and the camp's evacuation accelerated. Women and children were already moving toward the eastern ridge, while warriors prepared to cover their retreat. You must go with them, Katherine urged Wolf. I'll intercept the militia, try to reason with them. They won't listen to you, Wolf argued. Not now, with blood in their eyes. They might listen to the governor's daughter, Katherine replied, her chin lifting determinedly. And if not, my father will ensure that justice is done afterward. Wolf studied her face, seeing the resolve there. After a moment he nodded. I will come with you. Two voices may be heard where one would be ignored. Together, they rode toward the approaching militia, positioning themselves on a rise where they would be clearly visible. Katherine waved her shawl above her head, signaling for the riders to stop. To her relief, Mayor Harrison raised his hand, bringing the group to a halt. Blackwood, riding at the front, looked furious at the delay. Miss Adams, the mayor called. What in God's name are you doing out here? Preventing a terrible mistake, Katherine replied, projecting her voice to address the entire group. The Comanche are not planning an attack. They're breaking camp right now, moving away to avoid conflict. She's been bewitched by that savage beside her, Blackwood snarled, pointing at Wolf. Can't you see they're using her as a shield? I came to their camp of my own free will, Katherine countered, to warn them of your unprovoked aggression. There is no evidence of hostile intent on their part, only a deputy's desire for revenge. Murmurs ran through the militia as men exchanged uncertain glances. Many had followed Blackwood out of fear rather than conviction. Mayor Harrison looked troubled. Deputy Blackwood, you assured me you had reliable information. I do, Blackwood insisted, his hand moving to his pistol. And I won't let a woman's foolish infatuation stop us from protecting our town. In a flash, he drew his weapon, aiming not at Wolf but at Katherine. Step aside, Miss Adams. Now. Wolf moved his horse slightly forward, partially shielding Katherine. Lower your weapon, he said calmly. There is no honor in threatening women. The tension was broken by the arrival of a rider from town who galloped up to the mayor. Sir, a telegram from Governor Adams. He'll be arriving on tomorrow's train with a detachment of state militia. Mayor Harrison's expression shifted. Is that so? Well, Deputy Blackwood, it seems we have a new consideration. I'm not eager to explain to the governor why we attacked a peaceful Comanche camp, especially with his daughter caught in the crossfire. Blackwood's face contorted with rage. You're all cowards. They've killed our people for years, and now you'll let them walk away because of this woman's lies. Several men from the militia began to back their horses away. I didn't sign up to go against the governor, one muttered. Seeing his support evaporating, Blackwood made a desperate decision. He spurred his horse forward, firing a shot that whistled past Katherine's ear. Before he could fire again, Wolf moved with lightning speed, launching himself from his horse to tackle Blackwood to the ground. The deputy's gun discharged into the air as they fell, and then Wolf had him pinned, his knife at Blackwood's throat. Wolf, don't! Katherine cried, dismounting quickly. He's not worth it. For a tense moment, Wolf held the position, his blade pressing just hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. Then, with visible effort, he stepped back, sheathing his knife. You see, he said to the assembled militia, we choose peace, even when offered violence. Mayor Harrison rode forward, his expression grim. Deputy Blackwood, you're relieved of duty, effective immediately. Men, take him back to town and lock him in his own jail. As Blackwood was restrained by his former colleagues, Katherine approached the mayor. Will you speak with Chief Tallbear now? Reaffirm the agreements we reached yesterday? The mayor nodded. It seems the wiser course, Miss Adams. Perhaps you and your friend here would be willing to act as intermediaries? Katherine glanced at Wolf, who inclined his head in agreement. We would be honored, she replied. The next day, as promised, Governor Adams arrived in Silver Creek. After hearing the full account of events from both his daughter and Mayor Harrison, he personally met with Chief Tallbear to sign a formal amendment to the existing treaty, guaranteeing seasonal hunting rights and establishing a joint council to resolve future disputes. As preparations were made for the governor's return journey to Boston, he took Katherine aside. Your aunt tells me you've formed quite an attachment to this Comanche interpreter, he said carefully. Katherine met her father's gaze steadily. His name is Running Wolf, Father, and yes, I have come to respect him greatly. Governor Adams studied his daughter thoughtfully. You know such a friendship will raise eyebrows in Boston. I'm aware, Katherine replied, but I've learned that sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. Her father surprised her with a small smile. You're more like your mother than I realized. He paused, then added, I've been considering establishing a liaison office to improve relations with the native tribes. It would require someone with both education and understanding, someone who could bridge two worlds. Katherine's eyes widened. Father, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that perhaps your future lies here in the West rather than in Boston drawing rooms, he replied. Think about it. As the governor's party prepared to depart, Katherine sought out Wolf one last time. They met by the cottonwoods that had become their meeting place. My father has offered me a position, she told him, as a liaison between the government and the native tribes. Wolf's expression remained neutral, but his eyes betrayed his interest. And will you accept? I believe I will, Katherine replied. There's important work to be done here, understanding to be built. Wolf nodded slowly. It is good work, necessary work. He paused, then added quietly, I would be honored to assist in such efforts if my father agrees. Katherine felt a warmth spread through her chest. I would welcome your assistance, she said softly. We make a good team, it seems. We do, Wolf agreed, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. Perhaps in time we can build something lasting between our peoples. Perhaps, Katherine echoed, meeting his gaze with newfound confidence. We already have. As they walked back toward town side by side, neither spoke of the personal feelings growing between them. There would be time for that, and many challenges ahead. But for now, it was enough to know that they had found in each other not just an ally, but a kindred spirit, someone who saw beyond the boundaries of race and culture to the person beneath. In the golden light of the setting sun, Silver Creek looked different to Katherine, no longer a place of exile, but a beginning, a place where whispered truths could lead to unexpected journeys, and where courage could forge new paths through the wilderness of understanding.